completely loses control in front of millions of viewers. In just 33 seconds, a single comment would turn a casual interview into the most shocking moment in television history, ending with security escorting a guest off set while cameras kept rolling. The studio audience settled into their seats, excited for what they thought would be just another episode. The lights were bright, the energy was high, and Howard Stern sat behind his desk with that signature confident smile. He had interviewed thousands of people over his career. He knew how to handle anyone who sat across from him. Today's guest was Meghan Markle, and the crowd buzzed with anticipation. Howard started the interview the way he always did, warm and welcoming. Thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have this conversation with you. Meghan smiled, but there was something different about it, something tight around the edges. Well, I'm here now, so let's see if this is worth my time. The audience laughed nervously. Howard chuckled, thinking it was a joke. That's the spirit. So, let's jump right in. You've been in the public eye for quite some time now. How do you handle all the attention? Handle it? Meghan leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Howard, I don't handle attention. Attention follows me because of who I am. There's a difference. Howard nodded slowly, keeping his professional composure. Sure, I can understand that. But what I mean is, with all the media coverage, both positive and negative, how do you stay grounded? Grounded? Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. You think I need to stay grounded. I've lived more life than most people could ever dream of. I've been on television. I've been royalty. I've been everything. What could possibly make me feel like I need to be grounded? The audience went quiet. Howard's smile faded just a little, but he pressed on. This was live television, and he was a professional. I think what the audience wants to know is how you deal with criticism. Everyone faces it, especially people in your position. Criticism? Meghan repeated, her voice getting sharper. You mean the lies, the constant attacks, the people who are just jealous of what I've accomplished? That's not criticism, Howard. That's hatred. I'm not talking about hatred, Howard said calmly. I'm talking about fair criticism. When people disagree with choices you've made or things you've said, how do you process that? Meghan's face changed. Her eyes narrowed. Fair criticism? From who? From you? From people who sit in their comfortable studios and judge others? You have no idea what I've been through. Howard raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. You're absolutely right. I don't know everything you've been through. That's why I'm asking. That's why you're here, to share your perspective. My perspective, Meghan said slowly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You want my perspective? Here it is. Everyone in this room, everyone watching at home, they're all obsessed with me. They can't stop talking about me. And you know what? That's because I matter. I'm important. And most people can't handle that. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Howard took a deep breath. I think what makes someone important is how they treat other people. Would you agree with that? Are you seriously trying to lecture me right now? Meghan sat forward, her voice rising. You, Howard Stern, are going to tell me about treating people well? Do you know who you're talking to? I'm talking to my guest, Howard said, his voice still calm but firmer now. And I'm trying to have a respectful conversation. That's what we do here. Respectful? Meghan laughed again, louder this time. You want respect? Then maybe you should show me some respect first. Do you know how many interview requests I turned down? Do you know how lucky this show is that I even agreed to come here? Howard shook his head slightly. I appreciate you being here, but I don't think luck has anything to do with it. We invited you because we thought our audience would enjoy hearing from you. But I have to say, I'm not sure this is going the way either of us expected. Oh, so now it's my fault? Meghan's voice went up another notch. Of course. Blame me. That's what everyone always does. Nothing is ever about the real issues. It's always about me being difficult. me being demanding, me being too much. I didn't say any of those things, Howard replied, but I am saying that communication is a two-way street. I ask questions, you answer them. That's how interviews work, but it feels like you're here to argue rather than have a conversation. Meghan stood up suddenly, and the audience gasped. Maybe I'm arguing because your questions are insulting. Maybe I'm arguing because you clearly brought me here to make me look bad. Maybe I'm arguing because I'm sick and tired of people like you thinking you can talk to me however you want. Howard remained seated, looking up at her with a mix of surprise and concern. Meghan, please sit down. Nobody's trying to make you look bad. We can talk through this. Talk through this? Meghan's hands were shaking now. There's nothing to talk through. You invited me here under false pretenses. You said this would be a friendly conversation, but you've done nothing but attack me from the moment I sat down. I asked you about handling attention and dealing with criticism, Howard said, his voice still measured. Those are standard interview questions. I've asked them to hundreds of guests. Well, I'm not like your other guests, Meghan shot back. I'm not some nobody who's grateful to be on your show. I'm Meghan Markle. People around the world know my name. What do they know you for? Shock value? Controversy? At least I stand for something real. The audience was completely silent now. Howard stood up slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter, but stronger. You know what, Meghan? You're right. You're not like my other guests. Because every other guest who has sat in that chair, whether they were famous or just starting out, whether they agreed with me or not, they treated this conversation with respect. They understood that we're all human beings, trying to connect with each other. But you walked in here with an attitude, and you've done nothing but insult me, insult this show, and frankly, insult everyone who took time out of their day to listen to you. Meghan's face turned red. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you know what I could do to your career? Do you know how many people listen to what I say? And there it is, Howard said, shaking his head. The threat. The appeal to your fame and your power. You know what the sad thing is? You probably did have something meaningful to share. But instead of having a real conversation, instead of being vulnerable or honest or even just polite, you chose to make this about yourself in the worst way possible. You are unbelievable, Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. You sit there on your high horse, acting like you're some kind of saint. But you're just another bitter person who can't stand to see someone else shine brighter than you. I'm not on a high horse, Howard replied. I'm just doing my job. And part of my job is calling out behavior when it crosses a line. And Meghan, you crossed that line the moment you decided that being a guest on this show was beneath you. Beneath me? Meghan's voice was almost a shout now. It is beneath me. This whole thing is beneath me. You, your show, your audience, all of it. I should never have come here. I should never have wasted my time with someone as small-minded and insignificant as you. The audience erupted in scattered boos. Some people were shaking their heads. Others sat with their mouths open, unable to believe what they were hearing. This wasn't just a difficult interview anymore. This was something else entirely. Howard took a moment before responding. He looked at Meghan carefully, his expression a mix of disappointment and resolve. You know, I've been called a lot of things in my career. Small-minded isn't usually one of them. But if standing up for basic respect makes me small-minded in your eyes, then I'll take that label proudly. You don't get it, Meghan said, her voice still raised, but now with a trembling quality to it. You sit here every day, interviewing people, asking them questions, acting like you're some kind of authority on life. But you're not. You're just a man with a microphone who got lucky. Lucky, Howard repeated, nodding slowly. You know what? You're partially right. I am lucky. I'm lucky to have this platform. I'm lucky to get to talk to interesting people. I'm lucky that people trust me enough to come on this show and share their stories. But that luck came from years of work, years of building relationships, years of treating people with the respect they deserve. And that's the part you don't seem to understand. Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare lecture me about work. I have worked harder than you could possibly imagine. I have sacrificed more than you'll ever know. And I have earned every single thing I have. I'm sure you have worked hard, Howard said, his voice remaining steady. I'm not questioning that. What I'm questioning is why you think that hard work gives you permission to treat other people poorly. Because it doesn't. Hard work should make you more humble, not less. Humble? Meghan let out a harsh laugh. You want me to be humble? And after everything I've accomplished? After everything I've overcome? You want me to just shrink myself down and act grateful for every opportunity? That's not who I am. That's not who I'll ever be. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance, Howard replied. And right now, you're showing everyone watching the difference. The audience murmured in agreement. Meghan whipped around to face them, her expression fierce. Oh, so now you're all against me too? Of course you are. That's how it always goes. Everyone loves to tear down a successful woman. Everyone loves to watch her fail. Nobody wants to see you fail, Howard said firmly. But people do want to see you take responsibility for your actions, for your words, for the way you're treating everyone in this room right now. Meghan turned back to face him, her face flushed with emotion. My actions? What about your actions? You brought me here knowing this would happen. You set me up. You wanted me to look bad so you could look like the hero. Howard shook his head slowly, his patience clearly wearing thin, but his composure still intact. Meghan, I didn't set you up. I asked you standard interview questions. Questions I've asked 1,000 times before. The only person who made you look bad today is you. And the sad thing is, you still don't see it. I see it perfectly, Meghan shot back. I see a man who's threatened by a powerful woman. I see a show that's clearly past its prime trying to create drama for ratings. I see an audience full of people who don't know the first thing about me or my life. Then help us understand, Howard said, his voice suddenly softer. That's what you came here to do, isn't it? To share your story, to help people understand your perspective. But instead of doing that, instead of opening up, you've spent this entire time attacking everyone around you. For just a moment, something flickered across Meghan's face. Was it doubt? Regret? But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced once again by that hard, defensive expression. I don't owe anyone my story, she said coldly. I don't owe anyone explanations. And I certainly don't owe you anything. You're right, Howard agreed. You don't owe me anything. But when you accept an invitation to appear on a show, when you agree to sit down for a conversation, there's an implied understanding that you'll engage in good faith. And you haven't done that. Not once since you sat down. The tension in the studio was almost unbearable now. Every eye was on Meghan, waiting to see what she would do next, what she would say next. Good faith? Meghan's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. You want to talk about good faith? Where was the good faith when your producers contacted my team? When they promised this would be a respectful, dignified conversation? This is anything but respectful. What's not respectful, Howard countered, his own voice rising slightly for the first time, is coming onto someone's show and immediately acting like you're doing them a favor, just by being there. What's not respectful is insulting your host, your audience, and everyone who worked to make this interview happen. What's not respectful is turning a simple conversation into a personal attack. Meghan opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. For a second, it looked like she might actually back down, might actually acknowledge what was happening. But then, that stubborn pride took over again. I'm done with this, she declared. I'm done with you. I'm done with this show. And I'm done pretending like this was ever going to be a productive conversation. Howard nodded slowly. Okay, that's enough. I think we're done here. Oh, we're done? Meghan's laugh was almost manic. You don't get to decide when we're done. I decide that. I'm the one people came to see, not you. Actually, Howard said, pressing a button on his desk, I do get to decide. This is my show, and I'm asking you to leave. Asking me to leave? Meghan's eyes went wide. Are you serious right now? You're going to kick me off your show? Do you have any idea what this is going to do to your reputation? My reputation will be fine, Howard said calmly. I've been doing this for a long time, but yours, I'm not so sure. Because everyone watching this right now saw exactly who you are. They saw someone who couldn't handle a simple conversation without making it all about themselves. They saw someone who thinks being famous means you can treat people however you want. Two security guards appeared from the side of the stage. Meghan looked at them, then back at Howard, her mouth open in disbelief. You called security on me? I did, Howard confirmed. Because this interview is over and you need to leave. These gentlemen will escort you out. This is insane, Meghan said, backing away from the guards. This is absolutely insane. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Howard said quietly. And that's the problem. One of the security guards stepped closer. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. Don't touch me, Meghan snapped, pulling her arm away. I'll leave on my own. I don't need your help. I don't need anyone's help. Then please leave, Howard said, gesturing toward the exit. Meghan looked around the studio, at the cameras still rolling, at the audience staring at her in stunned silence, at Howard standing behind his desk with his arms crossed. For a moment, she seemed to realize where she was, what was happening. But instead of apologizing or backing down, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. You're all going to regret this, she said, her voice cold. Every single one of you. When I tell my side of this story, when people hear what really happened here, you're going to wish you had treated me better. We treated you with nothing but respect until you made that impossible, Howard said. And everything that happened here is on camera. There are no other sides. There's just what everyone saw. Meghan opened her mouth to respond, but one of the security guards stepped between her and Howard. Ma'am, it's time to go. For a second, it looked like Meghan might refuse. Her fists clenched at her sides, her jaw tight, but then she spun around and started walking toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. The security guards followed behind her, keeping a respectful distance, but making sure she actually left. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. This isn't over, Howard. Yes, it is, Howard replied. The door closed behind her, and the studio stayed silent for what felt like forever. Howard stood at his desk, looking drained but composed. Then, slowly, one person in the audience started clapping. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire studio was applauding, and Howard gave them a small, tired smile. Well, he said, sitting back down, that was something. The audience laughed, a release of all the tension that had built up over the past few minutes. Howard ran a hand through his hair and looked directly at the camera. You know, I've been doing this job for a very long time. I've interviewed people from all walks of life. Some interviews go great, some interviews are challenging, but they're almost always interesting. What you just saw, that wasn't interesting. That was someone who forgot that being a guest means showing up with some humility and some respect for the conversation. The audience applauded again. Howard held up his hand. I don't take pleasure in what just happened. I really don't. I wanted to have a good conversation. I wanted to learn something, to share something meaningful with all of you. But sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. You have to draw a line. And that line is treating people with basic human decency. More applause. Howard took a sip of water and set the glass down carefully. When someone comes onto your show, into your space, and disrespects not just you, but everyone in the room, everyone watching at home, you have a responsibility to address that. Not because you want drama, not because you want attention, but because staying silent makes you complicit. The audience was completely focused on him now, hanging on every word. I believe in giving people chances. I believe in forgiveness and understanding. But I also believe that actions have consequences. And the action of walking into a conversation with contempt, with arrogance, with a total disregard for anyone else in the room, that has to have consequences. Otherwise, what message are we sending? Howard shook his head firmly. No, that's not the world I want to live in. That's not the show I want to host. So when someone crosses that line, when someone makes it clear that they have no interest in actual communication, in actual connection, then yes, I'm going to ask them to leave. And I'd do it again tomorrow if I had to. The applause was thunderous now. People were standing, cheering. Howard waited for it to die down before continuing. What bothers me most about what just happened is the missed opportunity. There was a real conversation to be had there. Real questions about life in the spotlight, about navigating public opinion, about balancing personal truth with public perception. Those are fascinating topics. But instead of going there, instead of being vulnerable or honest or even just civil, we got defensiveness and hostility and threats. And that's just sad. He paused, looking down at his desk for a moment, before looking back up. You know what I hope? I hope that maybe, somewhere down the line, there's a moment of reflection. A moment where the question gets asked, why did that go so wrong? Not why did Howard make it go wrong? Not why did the audience make it go wrong? But what role did I play in that disaster? Because until that question gets asked, until there's some real self-awareness, nothing changes. And that's the real tragedy here. Howard picked up his pen and tapped it against his notepad. I've had guests disagree with me before. I've had guests challenge me, push back on my questions, even get a little heated. And that's fine. That's part of the conversation. But there's a difference between passionate disagreement and personal attacks. There's a difference between defending your perspective and insulting everyone around you. And what happened today crossed that line over and over again. The studio was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Respectful, attentive. I want to thank all of you for being here today, both in the studio and watching at home. I know this wasn't what you expected. It certainly wasn't what I expected. But sometimes the most important moments are the unplanned ones. The ones where you have to make a choice in real time about what kind of person you want to be, what kind of show you want to run, what kind of standards you want to uphold. Howard set his pen down and folded his hands on the desk. And my choice will always be to stand up for respect, to stand up for decency, to stand up for the idea that no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you don't get to treat other people like they're beneath you. Because nobody is beneath anyone. We're all just people trying to make it through this life, trying to find meaning and connection and purpose. And if we can't treat each other with basic kindness along the way, then what's the point of any of it? The audience gave him one more round of applause. Howard smiled, a genuine smile this time, and nodded his thanks. All right, he said, his voice lighter now. I think we've all had enough drama for one day. When we come back, we're going to reset, take a breath, and remember why we do this in the first place. To have real conversations with real people. To laugh, to learn, to connect. That's what this show is about. And that's what it's always going to be about. He looked directly into the camera one last time. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for supporting what's right. And thank you for being here, even when things get uncomfortable. Because that's when it matters most. The camera pulled back slowly, showing Howard at his desk, the empty chair across from him, and the audience still processing everything they had just witnessed. It was a moment that would be replayed thousands of times, analyzed and debated and discussed. But in that studio, in that moment, Everyone knew they had seen something significant, something real. They had seen someone stand up for basic human decency. And in a world that often feels like it's running short on exactly that, it mattered more than anyone could have imagined. The lights stayed bright, the cameras kept rolling, and Howard Stern sat behind his desk, tired but resolute, knowing he had done the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because that's what integrity looks like. Not in the easy moments, but in the ones that test you.